Okay, should I go ahead?
Yep, we're ready to get started.
Sounds good. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Erika Kluge, and I am the owner of Think with Success. I'm a special educator and assistive technology specialist. We're going to have a lot of information to talk about, so there's a few housekeeping items that I want to let you know about before we start. First off is that you can send questions via the chat at any time during this session. You are going to be all muted, so I won't be able to hear anything, and Rachel is going to keep track of the questions, and about 10 minutes prior to the end, we're going to try to address as many questions as we can. If you don't get your question answered, I encourage you to please reach out to me. I am happy to speak to you on the phone and answer any questions you have, or via email as well. We also want to put a big thank you out to Decoding Dyslexia for hosting this event. The last thing I want to let you know is there is a handout attached. You should be able to access that right now. It's a PDF format. It has all the information that I am going to be talking about with some additional instructions. Because we have so much information to go over, I'm not going to be able to demonstrate step by step for various factors that we're going to be talking about. But I did include hyperlinks with very short and easy to understand videos and or instructions for everything that I am talking about, because I wanted you to be able to walk away with this and go sit down at the computer or the iPad and be able to follow through with any of the information that we talked about. So let me go ahead and bring up my screen. Okay. All right, hang on one second. I just need to minimize my control panel. Oh, I guess that, there we go. Okay, so everybody should be able to see my computer screen now, and we're going to talk about using the iPad and Mac computer for remote learning, making reading and writing easier. Okay, here's my contact information, and again, you should have access to the handout, and it has all of my contact information as well as all the information we're going to be discussing today. So a little bit about me to start with. I've been working in this field for, gosh, probably about 30 years now. I don't sell and I don't endorse any products or services. So the ones I am referencing are ones that I found to be quite beneficial for the reasons I'm speaking to them about. I work with students in grades 2 throughout college and adults as well. Primarily, the students and individuals that I work with have the intellect to do quite well, but are stymied in the traditional academic or career setting with how they access information, process information, and then express their knowledge base. So quite a few are identified with learning disabilities, so dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD, processing disorder. I work with helping students identify what technology might be a best match for them. And I do IEEs for the school and do independent training as well. So we're also going to look at how to convert your child's paper-based assignments into workable digital formats, how to convert digital PDFs into workable PDFs, how to set your iPad and Mac accessibility features, and reading with the iPad and Mac and writing with the iPad and Mac. Okay, so first off, some considerations I want to bring up is that, you know, we kind of need to embrace this situation. We're all into this together, and it's okay to be scared and frustrated. What's going on right now with the pandemic and schooling at home is uncharted territory. So I'm finding from the different districts that I work with, the private schools as well, that there's a great variance of how they are going to move forward with this. Some are doing live broadcast where the students are expected to sit in and watch in their home setting during the entire class session. Others are doing recordings where the students can access at any time. and then putting assignments out there for the students to do on their own. So there's quite a bit of difference. You're not going to be expected as parents to turn into 100% your child's teacher. And I know that there is a fear with how do we take this role on. Little bit of background for you is that I do have 2 children who are identified as twice exceptional with some reading and some processing disorders. If you're not familiar with twice exceptional, that means they're intellectually gifted, my girls are, but also have another learning disability. So with the dyslexic aspects for one. About 30 years ago, my sister, one of her daughters, we were identified with significant dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD, and processing disorders. And she was also very medically fragile. So that meant that sometimes she was schooled at home more than she was in the actual classroom throughout the year. And this was pre-technology for a lot of what I'm going to be discussing today. So I had to be pretty creative in how are we going to get those curriculum activities in the classroom done within the home setting. I homeschooled 2 of my daughters, like I mentioned, for several years. So I know what it's like to jump in and then have to figure out, okay, how are we gonna make this work? In the handout that I gave you, there is an attached newsletter, a link to a newsletter that I wrote that has some additional suggestions that you might want to read about, especially with how to create a posted schedule. I think this is a trying time for the kids as well, and they can be very stressed and have a lot of anxiety as well. And most students are creatures of habit and like routine. So if there is a way to set up a dedicated spot where they will be doing their schooling or homework, and then to have a posted schedule of when they will be doing what classes. So sometimes that might be you want to stick to what their actual schedule was at school as much as you can. It might not be those exact hours, but if they have math first hour, maybe you start with first hour. You also want to plan for glitches. Technology, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're going to experience something that can cause a lot of frustration. How we react as adults and parents to that, the kids feed off of that. So instead of getting really upset with it or making some negative comments, try to laugh it off as best as you can and say, okay, let's figure out how we can do a workaround. Or you might end up saying, you know what, we're just going to do this another time. Let's go cuddle and read a book together and talk about it. Or let's go on a walk through the house or the neighborhood and talk about the different things that we see that we're grateful for. And maybe the students can write them down or draw some pictures about that as well. So just being creative and flexible in our schedules. Okay, so several of you, I'm assuming, are going to have paper assignments that you're going to be asked to do. Some kids might have brought home the actual paper, and then you might want to figure out how to get it scanned so that we can use it electronically. This might be a textbook that the child brought home, or if the teacher sent home some worksheets to do as well. So thoughts for scanning, that you want to make scans as flat as possible. So if it is in a book format where it can't be removed as a single page, you're going to have to try and push that down and figure out ways to make it as flat as possible. When you are scanning as well, if you're using a device like the phone on your camera or your iPad, the lighting in the room can really impact how well it scans. So sometimes it's easiest to, if it's a single piece of paper, tape it to a wall and take a picture of it that way. Or when you're putting it on a table, have it be more of a high contrast. So if there's something that's dark underneath it and your paper is, I'm guessing, probably white or light colored, okay? The other thing that we need to understand is, especially with the younger kids, teachers a lot of times will provide curriculum that looks like that photo over to the right side of the screen, where there is different fonts. Sometimes there's graphics added to it. That is a nightmare for scanning to have text read aloud. If we don't need to have the text read aloud, we can scan and it's going to look just like that and it's totally fine. But if we're going to ask that the device actually reads the words on that page, that's going to be quite a glitch for us. And so we need to know how to do some workarounds. I'm going to demonstrate those at the end, okay? But just so you know, we can take that scan and then we may need to add our own audio recording if it's instructions for what they need to do or if it's simply reading that page. We can do that quite quickly and quite easily using some of the programs and apps I'm going to reference towards the end. The other option that you could do if there's enough space on it. Now, this page that you see right now doesn't have a lot of blank space, so I would not recommend it for this. But if you're thinking of a typical worksheet where there's a question and then there's a large space for the students to write, there might be enough room there where you can add a text note. And the computer or the iPad is going to be able to read that text note to override that kind of creative text that you see up there. Cami is a software program, and Notability is also a software program and an app that will work on iOS as well as Mac OS X. So that's going to be the Mac computer or the iPad. And again, I'm going to demonstrate those in a little bit. Okay, so when we are scanning paper assignments, some of the formats that you might end up with as options are either a JPEG or a PDF, okay? Ways that you can scan that would be if you have a 3-in-1 or all-in-one printer at your house. Now, most newer versions of these have an actual setting for OCR. Now, OCR is going to be real important for us. If you've ever experienced opening up a PDF on the computer or the iPad, and then you try to select some of the text and you can't get the cursor to select text, the computer or the iPad actually sees it as a JPEG, even though it is saying that it's a PDF. It's non-workable or non-editable. So we need to convert that with a third-party app if it's already in the electronic format. If you're scanning the first time from that piece of paper and you're using your all-in-one printer, look and see if in the settings you have an OCR setting. Oftentimes that's not the default setting, so you're going to need to look and maybe search, do a web search for the user guide for your device and see if that is an option. Other ways to quickly scan paper is using your smartphone camera or the iPad camera. There's lots of third-party iOS apps out there that are scanning apps, and I'm not going to get into a bunch of them. They all serve different purposes. I'm going to list some that I think are good towards the end, but know that there are lots of ways that you can do this. If you have an Apple iOS, so either the iPad or an iPhone, you can scan directly into files or into the Notes app. And Apple did a real great job with the most recent update for iOS 13 with how you can do that and just hovering over it, and everything is automatic. It sees what it needs to do, it clicks on it, and you can have multiple pages added and then send those off to Google Docs or wherever you would like to keep them. I have step-by-step instructions for all of these in that handout, so do not worry, it's very easy to do. Remember that when you are putting files somewhere, if your child is going to be independently accessing them, that they need to understand where that file is located and also have a name that makes sense and is easy for them to read. I'm working with a middle school student who has more significant dyslexia, And one of his access problems is his Google Drive. His teachers have been wonderful about putting lots of files in there for him to gain access to. But when he sees all those little files with the names underneath, it takes forever for him to use the device to hover over and have each file read so he knows which one he is to open. So my best recommendation is just to make it easy. So make a folder, maybe color code it for each of the classes. And if you're scanning items, put them in there and only have maybe assignments for that specific day in there, or try to keep it to a week at the most, so that you don't have ideally more than 5, maybe 10 maximum within that folder. Okay, so now we're going to look at iPad accessibility. Instructions may be different for various iOS versions. But basically, you'll go to your settings app and you're going to click on general, and it will tell you about or software update. And if you click on one of those, it should give you the version that you are running. If your child has an iPad from school that they sent home, sometimes they are not running the most current operating system because schools like to hold off until they're really sure it's going to be a stable environment for them to use. Okay, so this will be important for you to identify what version of the software program that you're running, so that you can do a Google search if you need to, or a web search, to find out what additional settings you're going to need to use for that, for accessibility. In the handout that I gave you, and you can see it on the screen as well, it's going to show you how to turn on the accessibility features to enable speech or text to speech, which would be where we can highlight words that are on the iPad screen and have the iPad read them aloud to us. We can also identify what voice we want to read to us and how fast or slow that voice reads to us. We can also turn on enable dictation, and that will allow the student to talk into the device and have what they say printed for answering questions or creating papers. If you've ever heard of voice control, I wouldn't really recommend using that. I would just use the enable dictation. Voice control is great, but it's really set up for more limited fine motor skill needs, allowing full command of the device with voice. So somebody can say, open this app, and it will open up that particular app. The other thing with that, I feel there's just a little bit more of a security risk because it's always listening in the background. So in essence, it's kind of like Google, Alexa, if you have Siri on all the time as well. So Mac accessibility, again, very similar to the iOS for the iPad. You're going to want to see what version you are running. The most current version is El Capitan. The recent one prior to that was Mojave. And then I still have some students that are 1 or 2 previous to that. So when you go to the hyperlink that's included in the handout and you click on that, it's going to ask you what version are you looking for the control features for, and then it will walk you through those steps. On the Mac computer, you also have voice control, which I just talked about, and voice over. Some people get confused with voice over and text to speech. VoiceOver is really created more for people who have significant vision impairments, and it's going to read the entire screen. There's some other features with it. It just makes it a little bit more clunky and difficult. So I'd really stick to the text to speech, where basically you're highlighting what you want it to read, and then it reads it. There's a list of dictation commands to use when you're editing. Those are in the Apple instructions, so the students can learn some of those as well. So that would be, for instance, if they're dictating and they want to include some punctuation. So if they say period, question mark, that's going to show up. There's some more advanced ones with navigating through the document that you've written or correcting some text. Just stay simple. Most students, especially the younger ones, do fine with moving the cursor to go back and fix something rather than trying to remember the dictation command. Okay, reading with the iPad. Okay, so there's several ways that we can use the iPad to read. The first is accessibility allows one to select the text and have it read aloud. Okay. Note that not all websites or apps allow this accessibility feature. The majority of them will, but you may encounter one that does not. So I try to work with teachers that whenever they're going to send students to a particular website to do some work, that they check that out in advance because that can be really frustrating if the student goes and then they can't have that information read aloud to them. If you are not familiar with Learning Ally or Bookshare, please contact me. I can give you more information about those two organizations. If we have a kiddo that qualifies with a reading disorder, dyslexia is an automatic in, that provides them access to textbooks as well as current novels and classics, some magazines as well, where they can download them and then have them read using different devices. Okay. Bookshare is free for students, so if you do have a child who qualifies, hands down, I recommend that you get a membership to that right away. Learning Ally lost some of their federal funding years ago, and they're no longer free. It's a subscription based, but I believe it's very doable. A lot of the schools also have a subscription to Learning Ally and can provide that to the students who do qualify for that. No, the other difference I will tell you just real quick, Bookshare is going to provide print, and we're gonna have the device read the print for us. So it's gonna be called computer synthesized. Learning Ally is human narrated. They are now starting to have more books where you see the print with it as the human would be reading along. But I would equate that more to if you've listened to a book on Audible, it would be a good example for that. Notability is an app that works on both the Mac computer and the iPad, and it is great for making annotations. So this is probably the top app that a lot of my students use and most schools use if they have an iPad for finishing off worksheets, for doing notes in the class. It will connect directly to Google Docs and Google Drive. So a lot of schools are in the Google system and they like it for that reason. Cami is another one. It's a great product as well. It's going to connect to Google as well. Just note that Cami is not as robust with all of the features on the iPad as it is on the computer. So I think Notability is really kind of the top choice personally for ease of access for students at all grade levels. And again, I'm going to demonstrate these in a little bit. Reading on the Mac, again, the accessibility is going to allow you to highlight text and select two keys. So I have mine set up where it's Option plus Escape. So if I highlight text and I hit those two keys, it's going to read at a certain rate with a certain voice. And you can change those settings from those control feature keys as well. Again, you might find a website or an app that does not allow this. So you do want to take care with that. Now, Learning Ally has an app for the Mac computer that you can download and install. The app is free. You just need to have a membership to actually download books for that. Bookshare offers two ways to read on the Mac. Now, I should back up. I didn't mention this. On the iPad, I recommend you use Voice Dream as the app. It's a robust app. It links directly to Bookshare. It allows students to highlight, to leave notes. You can extract those notes to create a document. So it's a nice app to have. Bookshare on the Mac, you'll either use Web Reader or iBooks. I highly recommend that you use iBooks. Web Reader doesn't have the annotation tools, and sometimes for, when the computer glitches or your Wi-Fi goes in and out, it will refresh the page and the students have to go find where they were at previously. So iBooks is a dedicated standalone app, and you import it into there. You have your annotation features, and again, it can read it out loud, and it's a more stable environment. Read and Write for Google Chrome is another great product, and I'm going to demonstrate that one with how we can have information, whether it's worksheets, websites, documents, read on the Mac computer. Cami, again, that's the other one that's similar to Read and Write. They're just two different brands, so kind of like Nike and Adidas shoes. They pretty much have all the same features, and there's going to be a different cost value. Some schools do a universal design of learning where they might offer one of those for all the kids in school, so you might want to inquire and see if those are readily available. Because of the pandemic, most of the manufacturers or vendors for these programs I'm seeing are offering free trials of full features for while the schools are closed. So take advantage of that if you don't already have access to one of those. Read and Write, I know, has a 30-day free trial regardless throughout the year. If you happen to be a parent who also wears a hat as an educator, you can request a free year-long subscription to that, okay? It's going to tag to your Google account, so it won't tag to your child's, but they could at least use it on your computer, and you can see the features for that. Now, when you heard me talk about computer synthesized and human narrated, we do need to consider which one might be best for your child if they really need to have information read aloud to them. What I do is I will create several paragraphs, short paragraphs, or find an article that is within kind of the comprehension reading level for that child. And I will have the child try to read independently, maybe the first paragraph, ask some comprehension questions, so 2 or 3 questions about what was in that paragraph. The second paragraph, I will have the computer read, and I will let the student watch as it is being highlighted and read aloud to them, and I will ask them comprehension questions. The next paragraph, I will read aloud, so it's an example of human narrated, which would be Learning Ally. And again, they can follow along with their site and ask them comprehensions. Then I take away the device so they can't see the text, and I have the computer read a paragraph, and then I read a paragraph and ask. Sometimes you'll see a huge discrepancy between how quickly and accurately they can recall information from one format over the other. So for example, they may not recall the information from human narrated. I kind of equate that to if you've ever listened to a book on tape, and let's say you're listening to it in the car, and all of a sudden your mind wanders and you're like, what am I going to make for dinner? What are we going to do tonight? And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, who's that character? Where'd they come in? And you have to go back. Maybe listening to a computer synthesized voice or a different dialect, like a British speaker with a different cadence, can, in a way, subconsciously keep the mind more engaged for comprehension aspects. The other thing you want to look at is whether or not the text should be visible. Ideally, we do want the text visible because it makes it easier for doing annotations. But when we are having it read aloud, we're trying to increase productivity for these kiddos. So if decoding or fluency rates are so slow that they're losing track of what the information was that was presented in that paragraph or in that sentence, then having it read aloud can increase that comprehension. But if the print is there, sometimes their mind is subconsciously kind of reading, trying to sound out those words as they're hearing it, and their comprehension tanks because they're out of sync. But if we remove the text and they hear it, whether it's a computer reading it or whether it's human narrated, then their comprehension, really jumps up. So if that's the case, we don't want the print visible. We want them just paying attention to listening to it and keeping notes, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Some reading strategies that you want to consider to make things easier and go faster for the kids can be split screening. So both the computer and the iPad will allow you to split screen. So when my students work with me, oftentimes they will have one side of the screen that has their book open or the website, whatever they need to be doing, and the other side has an app or a program open where they are taking notes about what they are learning. Spatial awareness disappears with digital and audio text. So this is important because you need to consider this and take annotation or note-taking strategies. So for example, when you think about if you're holding a physical book in your hands and you've read sections of it, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that was at the beginning of the book, the middle of the book, or at the beginning of this chapter. Well, when we're listening to digital text or when we're listening to audio, and maybe we don't even have text visible, we have no idea where that was in the book. When we're scrolling hundreds of pages of digital text, we don't really have an idea where that was either. So kids need to really learn how to take good notes so they don't waste time having to go back and reread a lot of information. One of the ways that we can do that is help them create templates. So I'm going to show this in a little bit. So if they're reading a novel, I will have them put, chapter 1. What things would the teacher perhaps want them to remember from that chapter? Maybe the characters, the setting, the plot, maybe write down some quotes, maybe the themes. So we'll have those words, and then they know when they're done with that chapter to go ahead and get that information down in writing. Maybe looking at specific questions relating to the textbook as well. If you are reading with younger kids especially, I think, it's a great idea to maybe even cuddle in bed with them at night, use your iPad and take turns. You might read out loud to them, like you're probably doing right now, for their turn. And I know we're still, obviously practicing reading skills, but this is a different time for this. Let's say that maybe they have the next paragraph or the next several pages, the device reads, and both of you are just listening to that. But pick times to stop and then discuss what was going on. Ask open-ended questions and get them engaged. But what we want them to do is to start to think, okay, after I read a page, let me think about what that information told me. Use dictation to take faster notes on the computer or audio notes with Notability for the Mac or the iPad. So part of it, when I have students who come to me and they struggle with typing speed or penmanship or spelling, they don't like to take notes. And so many of them, after they learn some of the dictation or the audio note taking, so they're recording their voice, they'll make comments. I especially like it when it's the middle school or high school boys. Well, that was easy. Why didn't I do that before? So teach them some of these skills. Use Notability on the iPad to draw for younger children. I even have some older kids that like to do the hieroglyphics or kind of making the comic strips in a way. But if they can draw even simple stick figures, they can add audio recordings to that if they want, but you'd be surprised at the kids that do purposeful doodling and taking notes, and to us, it might look like hieroglyphics and would have no idea what went on in that class period, but those kids who use that and use it properly, they can go back and tell you probably more information than some of the other kids in class about what was discussed. Okay, I'm gonna move on to writing with the iPad. So again, we can use the accessibility features and dictation. Word prediction, if you're not familiar with this, that is where you start to type a letter and it's going phonemically off of what it thinks you're trying to say. So for instance, if a child is typing cat and they do a K, word choices are going to pop up, and CAT is probably going to be one of those choices. And read and write for Google Chrome and Co-Writer both offer word prediction that you can install as a keyboard installation. This is important. They're a standalone app, but you want to integrate it into the keyboard so that it will work in any app where you can type on the iPad, and then they just select Co-Writer or Read and Write, and those features are readily available for them. Know the difference between the two is that Co-Writer Universal allows you to select a topic dictionary, and at this time, Read and Write does not. It's going off of an algorithm for phonemic and contextual support. So the more you type about a certain topic, Read and Write's going to get a little bit smarter with you. But if they're just answering one word or simple sentences to questions, let's say about Greek mythology, something with more unique vocabulary as say Harry Potter, it's not going to come up with those words as readily as Co-Writer would if we said, okay, we're talking about the book Harry Potter, and all of those unique words, when they start to type H, you know, Hermione or Hogwarts, Hagrid, those choices are going to come up fairly quickly for them. Younger children or children with poor phonemic skills can use Notability to audio record answers and thoughts. This is a hard one. If we have a child, because their dyslexia has the reading level so discrepant, I work with a couple middle school and high school kids that the reading level is kind of at that 1st to 3rd grade level. Writing is really frustrating with them because you would think, okay, we'll just have them dictate into the computer. Well, if they can dictate, but as we know, technology is not perfect and they can't read what is on the screen. And so they don't know if it typed what they had actually said or not. Yes, we can have it reread to them, but that's a real tedious task and it takes a lot of time and they're not going to want to do their homework. Word prediction would be a great option, but again, it's off of phonemic spelling. So if they are really that low, that's not going to be a fast option for them either. So in the interim, while they're working with a reading tutor to build those skill sets, having them audio record their answers, I think, is the best option. Now, just know you need to work with the teachers, and this is going to be an accommodation you will have in a written document of some sort, whether it's an IEP, a 504 plan, or a learning plan. The teacher needs to either have access to the child's device that has that Notability app, or the teacher themselves has to have the Notability app on a device and the child can send the work through Notability or through the Google Drive to them, but it has to be Notability to Notability for that audio recording to show up on the actual worksheet. For final editing, Grammarly Keyboard is a great one for kids to use. Now know that Grammarly on the iPad is a free version. They don't allow you to have the premium version, which I really recommend for students with dyslexia and or dysgraphia. So for those kiddos that are finishing up a bigger project, I would say if the parent could let them use it on the computer and you have the premium version, that is ideal. The free version, they want you to buy the premium. So it's only set to trigger a few errors. But if you really want to get the majority of the errors, you're going to need that premium. Writing on the Mac, again, accessibility and dictation. Word prediction, both of those are going to work the same. Again, younger children can use either Notability or Cami. So remember I said that Cami was not as robust on the iPad. That's why I did not list that one as an easy to use one if they're going to audio record. On the computer, it works great, just not on the iOS. And again, Grammarly Premium. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate some of these programs for you. So let me pull up. Okay. Now, let me go. First off, in my handout, when we talked about needing to convert those PDFs that don't acknowledge or they're not workable, Claro PDF or Cloud Reader OCR, I think is one of the easiest ones that I have found. So basically what it looks like when we bring it up. Let me sign in here. I have second graders who do this independently when they get something from the teacher. Okay, so they have these 4 icons. So it's really easy for them to use. So they basically just click on whether it's local or the Google Drive, and I'm just going to do local because I think that one might go faster here. And I'm going to do the sharp one. So when it identifies it, then we always want to click PDF. I'm not going to do that now for time's sake, but when I do that, it sends it off to the cloud. It'll come back and it'll have those first 4 graphics and say, where do you want to send it? Do you want to send it back to Google? Do you want to put it back on your desktop? That's all you have to do. And now that's a workable PDF that they can use to have text read aloud and to use some of those writing tools on, okay? Claro, one of the things, this is a UK brand, and when I purchased it the previous years, the subscription I want to say was like $50 for like 5,000 scans. They do have a free version where you can have 5 scans each month. I did not see a current selling price on their thing, or if they are doing free for the coronavirus. So if that's something that interests you, I would just reach out to the vendors with that. Cami, they are offering a free full feature tool because of the coronavirus through the end of April, and they might extend it beyond that. You can get instant access signing up as a parent, and this does offer an OCR tool, so you can convert it inside of Cami as well. This is how the PDF is going to show up in Cami. So here are all of my features over here. So if I want to have something read, I am going to click
online
and
reading.
touch.
Granny Fox wanted Reddy Fox to learn to run across the railroad bridge, but Reddy was scared.
Okay, so you can see how easily we can have it read. Now, remember when I was talking about some of the funky fonts, like here's an example, this K5 Learning. It's probably, let me see if it'll read, but I'm
online
guessing.
Reading and Math for K5.
Yep,
Copyright.
see, it won't let me select and read on this. It's not identifying that. So one of the things we could do, if that was important to us, we could hit the comment and we could hit voice note. And then I click here. And now it's recording my voice. And let's just say this was instructions, and this is what you will do at this point. Then I can stop it. Now, when the child opens it up, they can see that there's a note there. They can touch it here. And now it's recording my voice, and they can hear what the information was that they needed to do, okay? So for example, down here, I left a note. You can use the text box to type your answer, or you can use the audio recording to make a verbal comment. Okay, so you get the idea. You as a parent or a teacher could easily set some audio recordings if the text would not read aloud, for instance. Or if you just want to add some additional instructions, that's a quick way to add some audio content. You can also do text boxes, but it's kind of nice to just go ahead and be able to listen to it. Okay, so if we want to type our answer, we hit the text box, and we can up here, if you see in my toolbar where I'm going around here, here's my co-writer app. So when I engage that, we see a box that comes up. And here's my topic dictionary. It looks like my last student was talking about alligators and crocodiles. So I'm just going to leave that one on. But basically, we could set any topic, molecular biology. We could do books, where the red fern grows, and then the character setting and words associated with that will show up. So now if I start to type the word alligator, do you see how that already showed up down here?
Alligators.
And when I hover,
all alligators,
it's going to read it aloud. I can click that, or the number 5 is associated with it. And if I touch 5, it automatically prints it inside the box. So that is an example of word prediction. The other option that students can get text written into that box would be, you could use Co-Writer with the dictation button, or you could do the accessibility features with the Mac as well. So if I click this, it should start to print what I am saying aloud. Okay, so you saw how that worked. So this is a great way for students to get worksheets, have the information read to them, and then be able to easily write their information, or more easily write their information down. Again, remember that if I have a younger student or one who really struggles with the phonemic spelling, then I would use the comment section, and I would click on the voice comment and insert their answer that way. So that is Cami. Here's an example of read and write. So read and write is this purple puzzle piece right here. And these are the feature tools that we have here. So if I want to have text read aloud, I can touch it.
African elephants are some of the smartest animals in the world.
Okay. And I've got some great highlighting tools as well. The other one did as well, but you can see my highlights here. I'm going to just click a few highlights here. Now, if I want to extract those, let's say it's a web page and I'm doing some research, I can click OK, and it should extract. There's my notes that I took. And it will, oops, I need to turn off my Co-Writer, sorry, it's blocking. And it's going to take me back to where my URL for my website or my document was. So this is a great way for students to take notes. The other thing you might want to look at with this is we can take single words and we can highlight them, and we can click the vocabulary extractor, and it is going to hopefully create a vocabulary study guide for us. So there's our word, our meaning, our symbols, and over here we can have the student use the writing tools to write their own sentence or bring it back to the context of where they were reading that information. So some nice features. I don't have time to go into all of them, but again, you can see that read and write makes it easy to have information read aloud, and they can also use the text tool to type. They can use word prediction, and you can also use dictation with this one as well. Another nice feature about this one, if I click on this, here's my answer. Now, if I want to have what I wrote read back to me,
here's my answer.
So that's kind of a nice feature, I think. You can increase the font size, decrease it. You can change the color of it. If I want to go back, I can move it around and I can extend it anyway. And then I just click that's going to keep it. If I want to get rid of it, I delete it. So this company has done a real nice job of making easy access for students to use. I know we're getting close on time. I just want to pull over my iPad real quick, if I can, and show you some iPad features.
Erika?
Yeah.
This is Rachel. Just want to let you know that you don't have to worry about the time right now because we don't have any questions yet. But those of you that do have questions, feel free to type them in, and I'll just kind of help you with the timing of things, Erika.
Perfect. Okay. So now you should be able to see my iPad screen. Okay. Now, if you're going to be using Cami on the iPad, you need to install the Google Chrome app. Down at the bottom, next to my settings, to the left of it is the Google Chrome app. And when I click on that, I already have Cami up and running. So it looks very similar to what you saw on the computer. And we have all of those features. The only thing about Cami on the iPad is that we can't engage the audio recording. So when I click on that and I try to create a voice note, do you see how this pop-up came and it said use latest Chrome browser to enable audio? That's because not all the features work inside of Cami on the iOS. So for that reason, if I have a student who really needs to leave voice notes, then I think Notability is going to be the best app for them. And I'm going to demonstrate that one as well here. So Notability, here's an example. And again, what's great with Notability is that we can easily import from the Google Drive if we have our worksheets sent there. We can also do it from Dropbox and from the actual desktop as well, but most schools that I work with do use the Google system. If I want to have information read aloud, I'm going to click on the T at the top, and I guess it's not showing you, unfortunately, you don't see my toolbar at the top with this. I don't know why that is. It should have broadcast, but it's not showing it to you. But I can click on a word, and I guess it's, yep, it's not going to show on the screen. It's highlighting it, but you'll hear it speak it here.
African elephants are some.
Okay, so I just did a few words there. So we can have information read aloud to us. We can draw on this. We can write, we can type. One of the nice features that we can do is we can hit the audio record button. So it's recording right now. And let's pretend that I have to give an answer here. So I'm gonna maybe circle number 3. Here's my answer, and I put that down. Another great way for Notability is I have students using it is that they'll ask their teacher on their assignments to give more information about what the teacher wants, to explain it again in greater detail. They'll audio record that, so when they're at home, they can listen to that as many times as they need to and get that information. Parents can write or audio record as well. So now when I go back and I want to listen to that, I simply touch it. Circle number 3. Here's my answer, and I put that down. Another great way for I can, when we're listening back to the audio, I can also speed up my voice or slow myself down. Now, here's a template that I talked about with Notability where I might split screen and have the students listening to their book or on using the voice stream. Let me see if I can pull that up and do both of these. Okay, here's a voice stream app. So this is going to work with Bookshare. All right, so let's just say, oops.
Erika, we've got a couple of questions. So
okay.
When you've got a chance, we'll
okay.
We'll
It's not great
read those too.
for me with scanning, and I'm not sure why it's using my camera right now. But one of the things with Notability, let's try one more time real quick. Nope, it's not going to work. I apologize. The technical glitches. Is that you can draw easily with that and audio record information. So Notability on the Mac looks just like this. Okay, so here's that same sheet. And if I were using my finger or Apple Pencil on the Mac, let's just say that this is my character, and I'm going to pretend it's Harry Potter. And then I hit the record button. Now I go and I can underline it, and then the student can say, well, Harry was a teenage boy who had a lightning bolt scar on his forehead. His friends were Ron and Hermione, okay? Now when we want to go back and listen to that at a later time, we can simply touch it. And then the student can say, well, Harry was a teenage boy who had a lightning. So I think you get the idea with that. Notability is just a really renowned tool, and I can't say enough great things. Again, these apps are fairly cheap. Most schools already use Notability. I don't sell, so I don't stay real current, but I want to say that the app, once you buy it, will work on all of your iOS devices, and I want to say it's probably about $40. Again, if you're looking to purchase any apps or software programs, at this point in time, I highly recommend you contact the vendors and see if they're running any kind of free program for the virus time frame. Most of them are doing that. Your schools might already have access to it as well. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and what are some of the questions?
Sure. I've got one here. What kind of success have you had with teachers supporting dictated answers and notability?
Okay, so let me make sure whoever wrote this, when you're talking dictated in notability, to me, dictate means that it's going to print what the student is saying. So the teachers are going to see typed text. Is that what you're asking about? Or are you asking about the audio recording? So they don't see any text, but they have to listen back to what the child actually said aloud. If we're referencing the latter, that they have to listen back to it, like I said, that is something that is more of a modification as well as an accommodation. So you do need to work with the teacher to see if they will either take that child's device at the end and listen to what the answers were, or if they have notability themselves. For the students that are identified as needing accommodations and modifications, I've had good success with the teachers being open to that if there is obviously a direct need. It's really no different than if they allow where the child can tell them the answer. So, you know, on some accommodations, it might be written in where the teacher can ask the child the question and the child verbalizes the answer and they score it there on the spot. Same thing, they're going to be listening to a verbal answer. However, this allows them to do it at a more convenient time, perhaps.
Okay.
Ideally, we do want to have text written down at some point, but there are some kids that just, there is not a way to do that unless we have a human scribe who writes that down for them. And we want to offer some forms of independence, especially, you know, while you're at home during this.
Okay, next question. Would you recommend the use of headphones or a headset with a microphone for kiddos with phonemic awareness, deficits, dyslexia, and ADD? If so, do you have a specific recommendation of one to purchase?
You know, the microphones that are built in to the devices now are really high quality. Most of my students don't use one. It's going to pick it up. Yes, you do need to be in a more quiet room. In the home setting, you know, if they can go off to a bedroom or a little bit more of a quiet area, that's ideal when you're doing dictation anyway. In the school setting, they would not be dictating in front of others, so it's not used inside the classroom setting. It would either be out in the hallway while class is in session, so it's quiet, or you know, it's a special room where they're taking an exam with that. If you do have somebody who wants to use a headset, you just need to do like a web search and see if it will engage and work with it. Most of them do. A lot of the kids have like the Beats headsets, and those will work fine. The one, you know, the ear pods that come with the iPhone, for example, or the iPad that are tethered with the cord, as long as they have a microphone built in, that's going to work as well. It's more of a comfort level for the kids. Yes, you can purchase very expensive, high quality noise canceling headphones. So for example, I have some adults that work in open settings, and when they're using those, literally the only thing it picks up is their voice. It's not listening to stuff in the background. So if it's a really noisy environment, you might want to. Otherwise, I say save your money for something else and just use the built-in microphone.
Okay, I have another question, and I'll answer this one. And this is commonly asked, but this individual is asking, will we be able to access the webinar when this is over? And so the answer to that is yes. If you've registered for the webinar, and whether you can attend the full webinar or just a portion of it, you will get a recording link tomorrow in your inbox from GoToWebinar. So from there, you can access it and play it back and listen to it at your own speed at any point that you like.
And
okay, one more for you, Erika.
Okay. Yep.
I've got, and oops, here we go. Are any read-write features available on the iPad other than word prediction?
Yes, they are. I just have not found it, kind of like I talked about with Cami. that when you're using it with the web, it's not quite as intuitive or robust as it is on the computer. I think, you know, a lot of times the kids that I'm working with, regardless of grade, if we split screen and they're just using the built-in accessibility features to have the websites read, and then they have the other side of the screen for taking notes and using, you know, the word prediction or the dictation for that, they can copy and paste information and slide it over very easily as well. So I typically don't engage the read and write for the reading purposes on the iPad, but you can.
Okay, we've got one more and then we need to wrap up.
Okay.
My kid's school is using Google Classroom. I have the Mac Siri speech working, so I realize that this is an option. I'd also like to get the Chrome and Google Docs speech option working. I cannot get speak function to work in Google Docs and can't change the voice of Chrome speech. Is there something that has to be set up for this to work?
Okay, so in my handout for the accessibility features for the iPad, you'll want to follow those instructions because that's where you'll get it to engage and it's going to pop up on the keyboard. Now, if you have multiple keyboards, you do need to select the English version keyboard so the microphone shows up. If you get a keyboard where the microphone is not there, that's because your settings are not set up or you're not on the English keyboard.
Okay, great. Thank you. And everyone, that handout is available. It's attached and uploaded. So where you see your dashboard for the webinar off to the right, well, on my screen, it's on my right, but you'll see something that says dashboard, attendees, handouts, and chat. And so just click on that handout button. And that's where the PDF has been uploaded to. And you'll want to download that to your computer. Okay.
Again,
Erika?
I'm very happy to take any additional questions if people contact me directly, either via email or my phone number. And I'm more than happy to take the time to walk you through setting up your device with any of the features if the instructions are not, you know, clear enough or you need that. So feel free to reach out.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us today, Erika, in hosting this webinar. We were glad to have you, and thanks everyone for joining. Again, the record link will come out tomorrow, so look for that in your inbox.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.